All right, welcome to Algebra 2. In this video, I'm going to go over how to solve absolute value equations. As we did in class today, I'm going to work through the odds on this worksheet, classwork solving absolute value equations, and show you how to set these up. So we have these steps here. The first step is going to be to isolate the absolute value. That means we want to get so that the absolute value is all by itself on one side of the equation, nothing outside of it. Then we're going to set up two equations. And of course, one of those, we just simply drop the absolute value bars and write it the way it looks. And the other one, we drop the absolute value bars and we set it equal to the opposite of the right side or of the number. We have two equations. We're going to solve each of those equations. And then the last step is to check your answers. So for the first few here, we look at them and the absolute value is already isolated. Here we have the absolute value v plus 5 is equal to 2. So we see we got our absolute value bars here. There's nothing on the outside of it. So we go to step 2. We set up our two equations. V plus 5 equals 2. Or v plus 5 equals the opposite, equals negative 2. We simply solve those. In this case, subtracting 5 from both sides. We have v equals negative 3. Or v equals negative 7. And then again, just to make sure, you plug those back in. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2. Absolute value is 2. Negative 7 plus 5 is negative 2. Absolute value is, of course, 2. So, yep, they both work. So you could write it this way. Or if you wanted to, you could put it in braces like that. Number 3. Absolute value of 4 plus 5k is equal to 29. Again, we got the absolute value isolated. So we just go ahead and set it equal. Set up our two equations, or 4 plus 5k equals negative 29. Solve each of those. Subtract 4 from both sides. 5k equals 25. Divide that by 5. We get k is equal to 5. Or, over here, we do the same steps, but we're going to get a different answer. So there we get negative 33. And divide by 5, and we have k is equal to negative 33 over 5. Can't simplify. So here we get an improper fraction, and we'll prefer that over mixed number or decimal. So that is fine for that. Number 5, again, we have absolute value. 4x minus 2 is equal to 26. Absolute value is isolated, so we just simply solve, set up our two equations. 4x minus 2 equals 26, or 4x minus 2 equals negative 26. And here we would have to add 2. We get 4x equals 28. Divide by 4, we get x equals 7. Over here, add 2. We get 4x equals negative 24. Divide by 4, we get x equals negative 6. So there again, we have our answer. Number 7, the absolute value is isolated. Now you could set up our two equations, but if you notice here, we have absolute value all by itself, but what do we have on the right side? We have a negative. So I usually just tell my students, if you see absolute value equals a negative, you can stop right there because absolute value cannot equal negative. Absolute value cannot equal a negative. That means we would have no solution. Absolute value is distance. Distance can't be negative. So you could just stop right there and write no solution. Now, if you did decide to set up your two equations, you could go through that, but eventually, after you solve them, I'll solve this one quickly. We would have negative 5k is equal to negative 45, k equals 9. If you plug that back in here, you should find out that it doesn't work because you would have negative 5 times 9 is negative 45, plus 10 is negative 35. Take the absolute value though, you get positive 35. You're not going to get a negative 35. And the same thing over here. If you would try to solve we get k is equal to -5. If you plug that in, -5 times 5 would be 25. 25 plus 10 is 35. Absolute value of that is not -35. It's +35. So neither of these work. These are examples of what's called extraneous solutions. Extraneous solutions. They're solutions that we get when we solve it, but they don't actually work in the original. And so the best answer here again is no solution. And again, we could have just stopped up here without any other work and just say no solution. Now on to the back. So on the back, now we have to isolate the absolute value. So the first one here, we have the absolute value bars, but now we've got something on the outside. We've got this +10. So we need to undo that first. We get absolute value, -10 minus 9k equals 28. And now the absolute value is isolated, and we can get it by itself. -10 minus 9k equals 28, or -10 minus 9k equals -28. And solve, add 10 over here. We get -9k equals 38. K is equal to -38 over 9, or add 10 here. We get -9k equals -18. K equals 2. So there again we have our two solutions. Number 11, we have -4, absolute value of x minus 4 equals -20. Now some people might say, oh, well, I see a negative sign. Can't we do what we did on the front and say no solution? Nope, not quite, because we don't have the absolute value all by itself over here. We have absolute value times -4. That -4 is being multiplied, so we need to divide by -4 first. And then we would have absolute value of x minus 4 is equal to 5. At that point, we can split the equation. X minus 4 equals 5, or x minus 4 equals -5. Add 4 to both sides, we get x equals 9, or x equals -1. The next one requires 2 steps because we have something added and we have something in front. We have a coefficient of 10. So first thing we need to do is isolate the absolute value. So 10, absolute value, 5b minus 4 equals 10. Now divide both sides by 10. 5b minus 4, still the absolute value bars there, equals 1. Now split it. 5b minus 4 equals 1, or 5b minus 4 equals -1. And we can solve each of those. Add 4 to both sides, divide by 5. We get b equals 1. Or we do the same thing over here. Add 4 to both sides, we get 3. Divide by 5, we get 3/5. 15, a little bit tricky. 6 minus 6, absolute value of -4r plus 2 is equal to 18. Now I said when you have numbers out in front, this 6 is being multiplied, but this 6 is being added or subtracted. So we need to get rid of the first 6 here. Subtract 6 from both sides. That gives us -6, absolute value. -4r plus 2 equals 12. Divide by -6, divide by -6, absolute value of -4r plus 2 is equal to -2. But now we have absolute value equals a negative, so we can stop right there and write no solution. And the last one that I'm going to do, 5 minus 7, absolute value of 5 minus x is equal to -44. Again, we can't say no solution on this one because we don't have the absolute value by itself. We need to subtract 5 first. Negative 7, absolute value of 5 minus x equals negative 49. Divide by negative 7. We have absolute value of 5 minus x equals positive 7. And now we can write our two equations, 5 minus x equals 7, or 5 minus x equals negative 7. Subtract 5 from both sides. Negative x is equal to 2. That means x has to be negative 2. Or, over here, negative x is equal to negative 12. X is equal to positive 12. So I hope that helps. And if you have any other questions, just let me know. Bye.